I think it's important to understand that grief, everybody experiences, it's universal. So like in your case, you said, but this is the way I experienced it. So even though that's common between everybody, that we all experience it, the way we experience it is unique.
Good afternoon and welcome to the second conversation with relationship and family therapist Merrishia Singh-Naicker. Our conversation today is dealing with grief. It's a very heavy topic, and I know a lot of homes can relate to this. We have been reading a story of Bohabo, who has lost her life after being killed by a 30-year-old man. And we wonder how perhaps that mother and that father is feeling at the moment, and what kind of support do you then offer to a person who's going through something like that. I would like to welcome Merrishia to join us for this one and really just unpack and give us tools to better deal with grief. I know there's no better way to deal with grief. It's always tough. It can never be easy. But I would like to believe that through these conversations, we'll always know how to empower a person, a parent who's out there crying for their child. Welcome, Merrishia.
Hi, Siwa, and thank you so much for the invite and thank you for the welcome. I'm happy to be here with you to be discussing, I guess, this very difficult topic. And condolences to the dear family that you mentioned on the passing away of their loved one.
It's a heavy topic, Merrishia, but I believe we can't, there's no way we're going to fix this society without having this type of conversations. And I wonder, just the first question would be, how does one offer and create a safe space during grief?
No, thank you for that. And I think it's so important for one to be able to grieve, especially when a family goes through the heart-rending, difficult time of losing a loved one in such a tragic way, and to make space for it. I think, there's definitely things that has someone coming alongside that you can do and offer support. And I think one of the first things is just to be present and provide a listening ear. And sometimes you don't even have to say anything, but just for the person to know that you are there, that you are present, that you are able to support them through this time. Because often, when tragic circumstances like this happen, there's not, definite things that you can say that would change what has happened. But just being present and being able to listen, I think, would be one of the most important things in terms of support for family or for a person who's grieving, to be able to have that.
There's also an issue, Merrishia, that one can notice. I remember I went through the same, not the same experience, but I lost my sister during COVID. And to me, she was like a mother. She was someone I had seen as a mother all my life, and now she was no more. And I remember how I used to reject any pity. I hated anyone who wanted to be in my space. I didn't know how to receive assistance. So I don't know if perhaps are there any tools that we could perhaps give to someone who's going through grief, but who also just doesn't know how to receive help.
You're quite, Siwa, and also condolences to you. I think so many of us lost loved ones during the pandemic. And it was so hard to grieve because we had to do it so differently. Funerals were done differently. We weren't given enough space and time to be able to do that. And it happened so suddenly and tragically. And so I think it's important to understand that grief, everybody experiences, it's universal. So like in your case, you said, but this is the way I experienced it. So even though that's common between everybody, that we all experience it, the way we experience it is unique. So though we all go through it, the way we experience it is unique. And to try and understand that people will experience it in different ways. And like you said, you needed space from other people, and for us to respect that. And then for others, they may want to be around people all the time. They may want to even laugh and make jokes. Others may want to cry all the time. Others don't want to talk at all. And so in a way, make space for each other's unique way of grieving, because it allows us to bear the unbearable, you know. And it may not make sense for you when you see somebody handling grief in that way, and you may wonder, hey, why are you doing that? You know, that's not the way to grieve. But try and understand where they're coming from and why they're doing it that way. But here are some important things to remember as well, that when people ask for space, that's okay, and honor and respect that. But it's also important not for people to go into total isolation. So when people are totally isolated and grieve totally on their own, while it may be helpful at the beginning, it then does become harmful if they don't establish connections once again. So you may take time out to grieve by yourself, but then seek community again. Seek out whether it's connecting with just one person if you feel, or maybe going out with friends, or maybe, you know, doing something that would kind of help you deal with some of the emotions. So there are different ways for grieving. You may start off saying, you know, I need my space, and that's okay, but make sure that doesn't lead to isolation long term.
But also there's an element of loneliness, where it doesn't matter if it's full, people have come to offer support, people have come, you know, to assist in the house, but you still feel lonely, you still feel empty. I don't know how better I would explain it. How do we help such a person? How do we empower such a person? Someone who feels empty, there's just no hope, there's nothing.
And again, Siwa, I think, you know, there's what in psychology we would call, you know, different stages of grief. And people feeling lonely is kind of one of those aspects that does come out, and it's very prominent feeling and emotion to deal with. And to know for the person that's going through it, and if you come alongside, for them to know you are there, you know, to give them the space, but that they know when they're ready. You could even say, when you're ready, you know, let me know, or reach out. But it, again, doesn't mean you have to be talking. It just means you can be sitting next to them, or it just means that you've sent them a message to know that I am there and that I'm still with you. And then also, it's part of the grieving process for that person who's lonely, because you'd be missing that person so much. You'd be hoping for them, you know, to hear their voice, to walk through the door, to be there with you, to maybe argue with you again, or you'd be really thinking about all of those memories, and it makes you even lonelier. And so I would say, find again safe spaces, or even a support group for people who are grieving or who have went through this. So there are grief support groups that you can find, or even if you can confide in somebody else, so that the loneliness doesn't become something that isolates you again. Because you will miss the person, you will miss what you had. And the memories sometimes, you know, can be overwhelming and overbearing to be on your own. So reach out. And I think that's what's important when it comes to grieving, is that you do not allow it to come to a space where you are total despair, and that you think that there is absolutely no hope. And when you start feeling those things, to see that as red flags, then that I must now reach out, because that's when people are more likely to do self-harm when they are going through grief. So most definitely loneliness does set in, but watch out for the signs that would lead you to be more self-harming or self-hurting to yourself, and then find spaces that you can deal with that.
And also, Merrishia, just to add on what you're saying, of course, we will miss someone who has passed away. And I think as an elder, it's perhaps easy to navigate that feeling. But now to children, what do you do when they miss their sibling? How do you then assist them to cope with loss?
Yes, with children, you know, often we want to protect children, and it's hard for us to be honest and truthful with them, especially when it comes, you know, to the death of a loved one, whether it's a sibling or a parent or relative. But it is important to be honest with them. Children do notice, and they are sensitive to what is going on. And so to be able to set up spaces where they can talk. And if they can't talk, then maybe do things with them that will get out their anger, or that they would ask questions. So I would say, even in those times where they are feeling like, okay, I don't know what's going on, or how do I deal with this? So maybe, you know, find ways of maybe even playing with, say, like Play-Doh, or coloring together, or drawing a picture, or listening to music with them, and asking them, how does that make you feel? Or show me what makes you happy, and what are you angry about? Or draw something that makes you sad. That for children really gets out what they're feeling, especially when they can't express their emotions through words. And so just doing little activities with them to be able to remember their loved one, even if you want to ask them, you know, draw a picture of a happy time that you had with your sibling. Or maybe if they want to write a letter to their sibling to tell them all the things that they wish they could tell them. So these are some ways in which to just provide a space for them to take out some of their emotions, whether it's their anger or their frustrations, or even their questions. You know, it's hard to explain death to children, but they do know what is going on, especially when they see adults around them crying, and they see adults around them dealing with grief in different ways. They themselves are handling it in their own way. And so to recognize that and provide a safe space for them to be able to handle it as well.
And I'm going to ask you a question that may look very obvious, but I mean, I would like to believe it has a very complicated answer. I don't know. I'm here to learn. I wonder if a parent ever heals from losing a child.
I've worked with many parents who have lost their children. And personally, if I had to ever go through that, I've come close to that. And I can say, I don't think ever any parent would ever be the same. And healing will look quite differently for parents. And some parents will say, no, you never heal. You never heal. And some parents will say, no, I don't want to heal, because it shows you how deep the wound is. The scar always remains, and sometimes the wound always remains. And it's a way for them to carry their grief throughout their lifetime. And I think you respect that and you honor that, because that's how much they loved their child, they still love their child, and how much they want to keep their memory alive. So you may not heal in a sense that, you know, you may never be okay that you've lost your child, or that your child has passed on. But there are ways in which you carry on living, and that you make life still meaningful for yourself. And so, yes, it's an absolutely tough one. But from every parent that I've spoken to who has, you know, had a child pass on, and if I think about it for myself, I think healing doesn't look like I've been healed completely from this. I think no parent can say that. And I think in a way, absolutely, it's a journey, and it does justice to truly understand that this is the great loss I feel from losing my child. And it's okay to say that I'll never fully be healed.
And I think that's where stress is introduced now into the family, where everyone is just feeling heavy. Everyone is feeling like it's just too much. Loss is just too much. Everyone is bitter about the situation of losing a loved one. And I wonder, how do we then deal with stress in the home environment?
Yes, grief is such a big stressor for families. And when a loved one in a family passes on, there's in many circumstances, you see families really breaking apart, or people divorcing, or just there's a split in the family. And it's really hard, and it takes hard work to maintain, and work through the difficulty of grief and the stresses that come with it. And so I would say to any family, if you notice that, your grief is causing more than it just being a stress, it becomes distressful. So stress is kind of a normal reaction to the things that you would go through. But when it becomes so distressful that you cannot establish good relationships with each other anymore, that the behaviors with each other become more toxic and harmful and hurtful. And if that is happening majority of the time, I would definitely encourage the family to seek help. So even if it means, sitting with somebody that they trust, that they can share their feelings, that they can share their emotions, and that they can really get out the anger that they feel. And this is an important one, because for many, we feel like, we shouldn't be angry, whether it's angry at God, angry at each other, angry at what had happened. But one of the most healthy ways in grieving is to really get out your anger and to deal with that anger and to vent it out in healthy ways. And so a family to find a safe space to do that, and to be able to share honestly and openly about what are the things they are going through, but to create a safe container for that. Because if it just happens haphazardly, or if it just happens, in the heat of the moment where you start lashing out at each other, it would do more harm. But if you find a safe space in a container with somebody who can help you, whether it's a counselor or whether it's a leader in your community, or maybe a spiritual leader that can take you through the process of listening to the emotions, of getting out your frustrations, of venting out your anger, and then that would definitely help. And then for the family to also just to get back, as much as it's so difficult, to get back into the routine of maybe like having a meal and sitting together. You may not want to do that because you miss this loved one so much, but then do things that the loved one loved doing, Maybe they loved going to watch a movie, or maybe they loved dancing. So do it in honor and in memory of them together as a family. So
So sorry, Merrishia, I was actually gonna ask that, how do we grieve together? How do we grieve together as a family? Is it something that's doable, where we can find unity within grief?
Yes, absolutely. And in many of our cultures, we have particular moments once the person has died, where we come together again, where we talk together, we eat together, we have ceremonies together, we do a memorial. So those are all healthy ways of grieving together. And unfortunately, in COVID pandemic, we were not able to often have that. And now, some people couldn't even have funerals. But again, as a family, to have a time where you would invite people, you provide a meal, you'd show pictures of the person, and each one will share memories about how this loved one impacted their lives. So that's definitely a way of grieving together. And then there's other, important things that you can do. Like I said, if your loved one really loved, whether it was dancing, you do some of that. Maybe they loved soccer and you host a soccer tournament in honor of them. Or maybe they loved giving, and so you give to a children's home in honor of them. And so that's a way of grieving together as a family. And over this last year, I've seen more families do that because they weren't able to have funerals during COVID, but now they have kind of, a memorial celebration of the life of their loved one. And that's a way to honor them, but it's also a way to grieve together.
Thank you so much, Merrishia. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time, and I believe you gave us really powerful tools. There's a lot to take away from this conversation, and I hope really we find healing. Other than anything, the main reason why we're having this conversation is to heal each other and heal in our different spaces. So thank you very much. If you haven't done so, you can follow us on all social media platforms and use our handle at MasiviweZA, or go to our website masiviwe.org.za. Nisale kakuhle makhaya.